Good morning, Year 4. I hope you're all well. In English today, we're going to be learning and revising how to use and punctuate direct speech correctly. To start with, I have a retrieval activity for you today. So could you please pause the video and answer the following 4 questions? Off you go. Okay, so the first question, write a definition for the word clearing. Now, if you watched our reading video a couple of sessions ago, you will have learnt that a clearing is an open space in a forest. Number 2, the definition is move or cause to move slightly, and we want to know what is the word. So what word has a definition of move or cause to move slightly? Now this was one of our other reading vocabulary words, and that word is stirred. So we know that Lila stirred in her sleep and she moved slightly, and that is what the definition is and the word is. So well done if you got those two. Number 3, identify the expanded noun phrase in the following sentence. Well, we know an expanded noun phrase needs the determiner, the 2 adjectives separated by a comma, followed by our noun. So the deep cerulean ocean is our expanded noun phrase here. Number 4, using the same sentence as the one above, can you identify the adverb? We know the adverb modifies the verb, and we know our verb here is dived, our doing word, our past tense verb. It's got the ed suffix in it. So our adverb is describing how the mythical creature dived rapidly. This rapidly is how the mythical creature dived. So well done for if you got all of those right. We are going to be doing these retrieval activities more often in English now to make sure we are making sure that we are keeping our vocabulary as good as it can be. We are going to look at another example of a poem today, but I need your help. I'm not quite sure if it's a narrative poem or not. So what we're going to do, we're going to read it together, and then I'm going to give you a few moments to try and convince me that it's a narrative poem, to try and tell me, Miss Newman, it is a narrative poem. It has this feature and this feature and this feature and this feature. That is what makes it a narrative poem. So I'm going to read it to you, and I want you to be thinking of all these features on my right-hand side of my screen. Are they included in this poem? Okay, so the poem is called The 3 Little Pigs. You might have known this story before, so let's have a look if it has been turned into a narrative poem. The first little pig in a house of straw heard a tap, tap, tap on her green little door. Little pig, let me come in, said the big bad wolf with the big bad grin. Then he huffed and he puffed and he huffed some more, and down went the little pig's house of straw. The next little pig was taking a nap in her house of sticks when she heard a tap. And the big bad wolf with a big bad grin gave a huff and a puff and blew her house in. Then the big bad wolf, still up to his tricks, went off to the 3rd little house of bricks. Little pig, let me come in, said the big bad wolf with the big bad grin, and he huffed and he puffed till his face turned red. My house is too tough, the little pig said. I'll come down the chimney, the wolf yelled, now! But the fire was lit and the wolf yelled, ow! And shot straight out in a cloud of smoke, as the 3rd little pig gave the fire a poke. Then the wolf blew on his paws with a huff and a puff, and he hobbled off home. He'd had enough. So I'm going to leave these features up on the screen now. I'd like you to pause the video and have a think. Can this poem be considered a narrative poem? You have to convince me, okay? So pause the video now, please. Okay, so can you start telling me things? Talk to the screen. Is this a narrative poem? What features of a narrative poem does it have? Can you tell the screen, please? Fantastic, you've got lots and lots of features there. Now, I had a go myself at annotating my poem. I obviously haven't labelled it, but I've highlighted it to let me know that these are the features that I've spotted that show me that this is a narrative poem. So, first of all, let's start with the characters. So we can see here in my blue highlighter, I've got the first little pig, the wolf, the next little pig, and the third little pig. So this tells me here that there are characters in this poem. But is it a narrative poem yet? We need more than just the characters to decide that. So we can see here that it has a chronological series of events, and they actually use time sequencing words here. So we've got this word then highlighted in purple. Then. That tells me that it's looking at the next event in a chronological series. Then he huffed, then the big bad wolf, then the wolf blew. So that then tells me it's like a chronological series of events. We do have a plot here. It is a storyline, like in the story of the Three Little Pigs, but I couldn't highlight the whole of the poem. But we can see that there is a plot here. We can see that there's some rhyme here. More, straw, nap, tap, now, ow, smoke, poke, puff, enough. Now this rhyme tells me that it could be a narrative poem now that I've seen this. I can kind of see here that there is some rhythm. Gave a huff and a puff and blew her house in. Then the big bad wolf, still up to his tricks, went off to the third little house of bricks. It's a nice rhythm. The syllabic pattern that this poet has used is really, really nice to read. It is nice rhythm for us to read. We can also see some alliteration here. The big bad wolf with a big bad grin. You've got your alliteration here. And finally then, sometimes have dialogue. Well, we know it's dialogue because we can see these here. What are these called? Inverted commas, well done. So we can see here that they do have dialogue. We know that in some narrative poems that the poet doesn't always identify that it is dialogue by using our inverted commas. Sometimes they will just leave them out. But yes, they do have that. Now, I want you to have a think. What do you like about this poem and what do you maybe dislike about this poem? And can we call this poem a narrative poem? Have a think. Pause the video. Okay, so can you just show me with a nod of your head or a bit of a shake of your head, can we call this a narrative poem? I think we can, absolutely, of course we can call it a narrative poem. We've spotted most, if not all, of these features here that narrative poems have, and we have identified this to be a narrative poem, so well done. Now, we have identified that there are some speech in this poem, The Three Little Pigs, and that is what we are going to be looking at in a bit more detail today. We are going to be looking at how we can punctuate speech and use direct speech and reported clauses. Now, we have seen these speech bubbles before, whether we're reading a book or we're looking at a storyboard, for example, and this shows me a picture of a wolf with a speech bubble coming out of it. So this shows me that this is what he is saying. Little pig, let me come in. And the words that are actually spoken here are known as the direct speech, what is being said. And sometimes though, if we are writing a story or a poem, if we are consistently putting bubbles in our writing, it would take up too much room. So this is why we use our inverted commas to help us show that it is speech instead, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. We need to understand that inverted commas work in pairs. So we have the first set of inverted commas and the second set. And what they do is they kind of hug the direct speech, the words that are being said in this sentence, for example. So in this sentence, the words that are being spoken are, little pig, let me come in. So those would be hugged by our inverted commas, as you can see here. And we report who is speaking using a reported clause. We've looked a lot about this. Do you remember when I used to say when we were in class that said is banned? We can't say the reported clause said because we can think of lots of better reporting clauses to use rather than said. Can we just have a bit of a recap and you shout at the screen some more examples of reported clauses of how these people can be speaking and saying what they want to say? Have a go and shout me some. Off you go. I can hear lots. I can hear shouted, I can hear exclaimed, I can hear replied, I can hear lots of them. So well done, good remembering. Here they have chosen to use the reported clause in purple, roared the wolf. So here we have a bit of a conversation. The wolf is saying, let me come in, and the pig is saying, my house is too tough. I would like you to have a go at writing this conversation as punctuated speech, remembering to hug that direct speech in green with those inverted commas, and also to add your reported clauses after. Now you can decide how they're speaking, but I want you to have a go at that, please. So just pause the video and have a go at writing this conversation as punctuated speech. Off you go. Okay, so how did you get on? Let's see if you've got something similar to what I've got. So first of all, I have the direct speech, let me come in. So I've hugged that in my inverted commas. You'll also note that I've got a comma at the end of my direct speech here too, and we're going to be learning about why there needs to be some sort of punctuation after the direct speech in a moment. We've then chosen to use the word said the wolf. I can hear lots of you saying, Miss Newman, said is banned. You're absolutely right. I was trying to catch you out there. So we could have said, shouted the wolf, screamed the wolf. Would we have used whispered the wolf? Probably not, because how did the wolf feel? Was he happy? Was he angry? He was quite angry, wasn't he? He wouldn't be very happy, and he wouldn't be very polite to the pig by saying, let me come in, whispered the wolf. He would have probably been like, let me come in, shouted the wolf. And then, my house is too tough, replied the pig. Remember, we don't have those inverted commas after the reported clause because it's only the direct speech, what is being said, that includes them. Well done if you got those right. Another rule that we need to know when we are looking at punctuating speech is that capital letters always open direct speech. So direct speech, like here in green, always begins with a capital letter, even if this direct speech is in the middle of your whole sentence. So you can see here, the wolf demanded, let me come in. But this let has a capital L at the start of it, even though it's in the middle of your sentence. It's the start of your direct speech. So it means it's the start of something that somebody is saying. So it always requires a capital letter. And you can see another example here, this conversation that the wolf and the pig are having. The wolf demanded, capital L, let me come in. The pig answered, capital M, my house is too tough. Because it's the beginning of what the speaker is saying, and that's why a capital letter is used. However, there's one exception where we don't always use a capital letter, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. We know that direct speech always begins with a capital letter, even if it's in the middle of our whole sentence of what we're saying. However, if the speech sentence is interrupted by a reported clause, the speech sentence continues with a lowercase word. This might sound quite confusing, so let me show you an example. Please, just go away, the pig pleaded. Now you can see that this direct speech isn't continuing past the reported clause of the pig pleaded, so that's why we have a capital letter here. However, in the second example, the direct speech is broken up into two sections, where the same sentence is being spoken, which is, please, just go away, but the reported clause is now in the middle of our direct speech. So here you can see we've started the direct speech with our capital letter, which is our rule, but because we've split it up by stopping that direct speech in the middle and saying the pig pleaded, just go away. That just does not need a capital J because it's still the same line that that speaker is saying. So I'm going to pause the video here and do a part 2. So if you just go on to part 2 of English and we will continue where we've left off.